I don't know if a construct or a goal that was created by somebody that isn't me or isn't part of who I am as a woman, if that's the right goal I should be working towards. Like, why? Let's have that conversation.
This is Seemingly Unrelated, the podcast that digs into the true stories behind everyday life to reveal the unexpected foundations of how and why we live the way we do. This season, we're going to get to the truth of what social constructs are by taking apart the most hotly debated, perhaps least understood social construct of them all: gender. From fish tacos to royally decreed school uniforms, these seemingly unrelated events reveal things you've always thought were incontestable facts are actually social constructs. Joining me, Dr. Andrew Johnstone, all season to separate biological fact from fiction is puppeteer, director, and generally brilliant co-host Alicia Britt.
Woo!
And of course, the queen herself, producer Naomi.
Hello!
We will be bringing out episodes every Tuesday, but if you can't wait that long, this whole season is available right now in full and ad-free at patreon.com/seeminglyunrelated. If you're just joining us this episode and haven't listened to episode 1 of season 3 yet, we really recommend starting there and taking the whole season in order. It's just easier that way. Now, grab your Barbie doll and your golf putter, get ready to enjoy Seemingly Unrelated. Hey Al, fun fact.
What you got for me?
Did you know that the word golf actually is an acronym that stands for Gentlemen Only, Ladies Forbidden?
This, Andrew Johnstone, I think this is a lie. Don't come at me with acronyms at this time in the afternoon, man.
Boiled again. You win this time, puppet master.
I actually thought that was real, and I've read the script before, but I'd just forgotten. I'm gullible until the last moment.
But that doesn't stop multiple ill-informed and highly not recommended generative AI sources from saying that it's true when you try and search for it. Maybe because over the past 10 years, the debate about gender-segregated sport has been louder and more intense than it ever seen before.
That does feel true, because while some people want to decouple gender from games like baseball or association football or golf or basketball, others have been arguing that this segregation is important because otherwise women in those sports would be at a distinct disadvantage because men are, quote, naturally more athletic.
Wow.
Oh my God, I could hear that eye roll. I could hear the eye roll on that one.
The explanations for why men are so strong vary from hormone production to bone density and a lot of stuff that most people don't know about that's in between.
And that's all before we even get into the whole trans athlete debate. But is the explanation for this separation of genders in the field of sport about chemistry, biology, and physics? Or is it actually about Queen Victoria's royal train carriage and a school teacher's passionate love for the muscular figure of Jesus Christ?
Well, let's take a look at the history of golf to find out how the very idea of women's sports is actually a social construct.
So golf, the sport of golf, was invented in Scotland. Put some bagpipe music right here, Naomi. I think that's important.
Never.
Sometime. It was invented in Scotland sometime in the medieval period. Nobody knows exactly when, because that would be weird if we did. But we do know that the first time it pops up in the law is in 1457, when it was banned as a waste of time because men shouldn't be wasting all their days hitting golf balls, they should be practicing their archery to kill the English. But by 1502, King James IV himself was gifted with a really swanky set of golf clubs, and Scotland has been in love with the game ever since.
So unlike the snooty country clubs full of old boys conducting business meetings, as we think of today, for most of its history in the UK, golf has been enjoyed by pretty much anyone who could manage to find a wee ball, a stick, and a free afternoon. Laws have actually had to be passed to prevent people playing it in the streets and on Sundays, just to stop the Scots from spending every waking moment creating sporting chaos and many a broken window.
Sounds like a good day to me. The popularity of the sport outside of certain parts of Scotland, though, really kicks off in the 1850s, when we developed a new way to produce golf balls.
With the little dimples.
Yes, the little dimples indeed emerged at that time. And at the same time, we get the leisure class growing in Victorian Britain, which has been featured on previous episodes, such as when we talk about seaside towns like Brighton, or the invention of the full English breakfast, or unwrapping parties.
Wait, you mean like unboxing videos?
Oh no, Al, unwrapping parties where they definitely defiled mummies in dark and disturbing ways.
I don't remember us talking about this.
Well, that's it's on a bonus episode.
I was going to say, I'd feel like I would remember that.
The Victorians were crazy. Go back to the October 2025 bonus episode. So then, of course, Queen Victoria bought and expanded what is now called Balmoral Castle. That's the royal family's home in Scotland. And in 1882, she also had a dedicated train service constructed that would take her from London up to Balmoral so that she could play golf. This is why that train line was built.
What a baller.
By the way, part of the train line we still use today to go from London to Edinburgh. So she was a big fan of golf at the Royal and Ancient Golf Club of St. Andrews, also known as the RAA.
So anything that Queen Vic did was automatically in fashion. Big butts, full black dress, outfit, veil,
Absolutely.
the whole black ensemble. Even eating crustless sandwiches and cake at 3 p.m.
Nom, nom, nom.
Thanks, Queen Vic. We owe you one. All the good stuff. At the start of 1880, there were 12 golf courses in England, but by 1890, there were estimated to be 1,000.
But originally, Queen Victoria was drawn to golf because women were actively playing the sport. Like, she didn't discover it. Her friends played it. Women from a wide range of classes would show up to golf courses across Scotland. And it was the fishwives of Musselburgh who formed the first Ladies' Golf Association in 1852. So those of you not familiar with fishwives, the men go out and do the fishing, then the wives clean the catch and sell it at market.
I just imagine them being really muscly because they're from Musselburgh.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean Musselburgh, of course, referring to mussels, the seafood, the little black. But they would also be muscly. I don't know if you've ever had a clean fish before, but they're deft with a knife, like a pretty hefty knife. So yeah, no, they would also be very muscly. So what these ladies of little means revealed about the sport, though, was a little bit shocking to the upper crusty types who also enjoyed playing golf. They were really good at it. Unburdened by the layers of garments that weighed wealthy women down and made like the fluid movement of hips and shoulders quite difficult, these fishwives in their simple, apron and brown potato sack, I assume, clothing, they quickly managed to put up some really impressive numbers. They were on par with, and sometimes even exceeded, the scores of prominent male players at the time.
Then, coincidentally, for those chaps to rid the threat of women who get too good, in 1860, the RAA created a new game for ladies to play, which was called the short game and focused on putting rather than, those so troublesome long-distance drives.
Crazy golf, you misogynistic bastard.
Don't come for crazy golf, though.
But
I was
that's
going
what
to
it
say,
is.
I kind of love crazy golf. Am I a misogynist?
No, I mean, we all like crazy golf, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got a fun name as well.
It's an accidentally good thing that came out of misogyny.
Yeah.
And I just happen to be very, very good at it. So I will take any chat.
And I'm terrible at it, so go ahead.
It's because you only have to focus on your short putting, Al. You know, that's you woman.
Yeah, your emotional woman brain, you can't handle drives. You can only do putts.
Women were barred from the rest of the courses, one by one, and would not get their own regular 9-hole golf course at the RAA until 1897, when the Jubilee course was opened. The only reason anyone even allowed that one regular golf course for women was because in 1893, women across England organised their own tournament to prove their skill and get some press coverage of their banishment to mini golfdom.
The name of that 1893 tournament, the Ladies British Open Amateur Championship, gives a little clue that by claiming to be amateurs, these women were allowed to play on those courses they had been barred from before under the false assumption of their inferiority. Let's not get into the fact that professional amateur do not mean good and not good. They mean person who gets paid to do it and person who doesn't get paid to do it. But women competed entirely in amateur tournaments around the world until the 1970s, when the Ladies Professional Golf Association, the LPGA, was formed. A few notable exceptions occur throughout that time period, so from the 1870s roughly until the 1970s, including one Helen Charlotte Maud Anderson. And she was quoted as saying that she did not want to, quote, provoke any reaction from the male professionals, end quote. And so she just referred to herself as an amateur, even though she had like won prize money and got an endorsement along the way.
What are these men so afraid of? Why not face women? Come on, face us head on in competition and prove your strength, sir.
Well, what they were afraid of was that with industrialization, which meant that people were in the factories instead of out in the farms, and the influx of immigrants to both Britain and the United States, white men mostly were afraid they were going to become physically quite weak, which meant that then they would give into moral weakness like drinking and I don't know, because these are the kind of people who thought it was moral to kill people. So drinking. So good men, to be good men, need to be strong. They've got to protect the weak. Those people weaker than themselves, like the poor and women and brown people they don't understand. This ideology that morality is tied to strength is called muscular Christianity.
Wow.
So sports became one way that you could actually be a good Christian, demonstrating your strength. Now you're being a good moral person. That movement picked up steam in the town of Rugby. Any guesses to what sport they played in Rugby?
Tennis.
Crazy golf.
Both of those things are true. When a schoolmaster of a local boys' school in the 1860s was absolutely adamant that his male students do their best to emulate the physique of Christ on the cross.
What?
That's crazy.
It's a thing because in reality, Jesus, you would have seen all of Jesus's muscles because he's dehydrated. He hasn't eaten since the Last Supper, where he had like a little bit of bread. And then if you're hanging on a cross like that with your shoulders in a straight line, your body's gonna hunch down, so your ab muscles are going to be more exposed. So like, yeah, Jesus should have ab muscles technically when he's portrayed on a crucifix, but what people have done with that imagery.
No.
Don't look it up.
That's just not the kind of influencer that JC wanted to be. Like,
but I also, do you know what I think's kind of messed up in a more dark manner? Is that the schoolmaster is like trying to say what these young boys should look like. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I have a really vested opinion about what your physique should be.
Anyway, by the 1890s, doing whatever sport was in your local area was essential to being a good Christian. This is how football became popular in both the US and the UK. Fresh air, healthy competition, and physical fitness, that was the best way to get to God.
But if playing sports was all muscular, masculine, manly stuff, that meant that despite there being no difference, really, in the quality of play between men and women in a lot of different sports, it was the wrong, air quotes, energy for a feminine lady to be tapping into. Remember, back to episode 3 of this season, a good Christian woman should just be making babies without having sex. That last part's really important. The trend was to keep women in their own separate bubbles, put them in their own spheres. Should be playing the short game, mini golf. They should be in, tennis of some stripe. That was a real ladies' game for a while as well. And starting in 1921, this sort of, we'll say, rule of thumb segregation began to be properly codified when the Football Association banned women from playing association football outright, despite the fact that women were the ones who set an attendance record of 50,000 spectators for a single game in 1920.
As women and men, boys and girls played apart from each other, the skills they developed in athletics got further and further apart. The rules are written for men, the resources are available for men. How could women ever hope to compete?
So, had either of you heard of Muscular Christianity before? Was this news to you?
Never. This is an insane concept. I can't believe it's real.
You're saying you've never lusted after the crucifix?
Not really.
Probably its biggest proponent was President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt, aka Teddy, who was like, he was really sickly as a child, and then as a grown man, he became like a football player and like a wild game hunter. Like, he was very much like, I gotta be a man. He was a weird dude, but he was really keen on like men being able to prove themselves through like violent sports, especially. He's kind of responsible for the Harvard-Yale football rivalry. And his whole argument is rooted in what we talked about last week and the Neo-Stoics and this idea of like men got to get ready for war. But instead of the Neo-Stoics who connected it directly to the actual like training, Roosevelt's like, get them while they're young. Get the boys into teams, get them into uniforms, let them wail on each other for a couple hours a week, and then they'll be ready to fight.
I can't remember where I heard this recently, but someone said that history is the history of war. Was it you?
I think I was saying that that's what my high school teacher said about it. It made me really mad.
I was like thinking I heard this in the podcast, but I heard it in our podcast when we were recording it.
You did hear it in a podcast.
But it's interesting that it links back to war as well. I feel like everything just goes back to that, doesn't it?
Only because war is like the culmination of a lot of, like, it requires a lot of things. Like, war isn't just what's happening on the battlefield.
And what made you want to think about sports and this muscular Christianity in that relation to gender social constructs? How do you think this links?
The segregation of the sports, right? They very much put women at a distinct disadvantage for like 100 years. There's like 100-year period from like the 1860s until the 1970s where just like there's no push for women to do sports because there's like no moral drive to it, essentially. So like if everyone's saying oh, to be a good man, to be a good Christian man is to be this fit, muscular, violent, outdoorsy type of dude, then all that resources and energy go towards making that happen. Like literally the shaping of New York City and how many parks are available in that city, and London as well, are connected to this. Like it changes people. They spend a lot of money building baseball fields and football fields and things so that boys can be good Christian muscular boys, right? But then that means that energy doesn't go into women. Those resources don't go into women. There's no expenditure of like women sports really, outside of like archery kind of picks up at one point in time in the 30s and is now a sport that's actually dominated by women. And like horse dressage, you know, sort of like these very specific sports do become like quote women's sports. And then in the 1970s there's this push to like fund women's sports all of a sudden. So the fact that women aren't competing on the same par with men is because they're just naturally weaker. And you're like, no, it's because 100 fucking years, you've gotten millions of dollars to play football and basketball as men, and women have gotten 2 nickels and like a paperclip and been like, I don't know, go figure it out. And the minute you decide to give them any money and they don't perform, you're like, oh, women are weak, bullshit. And that's what inspired me. I'm just angry.
I mean, like, it really did make me think. Like, I remember a long time ago, I watched this really great documentary on BBC. I'll look it up. It's called No More Boys and Girls. Can Our Kids Go Gender Free? It's not on BBC right now, but if we all email them, maybe. YouTube is available. But this guy, he took a class of year 3 school kids, all like both genders, and he ran a load of experiments. There's actually like a little clip on the page, you can watch it, where they have like a test your strength machine from like one of those like fun fair places, and he surveys all the kids and he says like, how strong do you think you'll be? And all the girls like say they're not going to be as strong as the boys, like, but he then goes on to say like that, you know, they don't start getting a difference in strength until like when they become older. So like the girls are marking themselves and thinking themselves weaker because they're being conditioned, and then the girls especially, like they hit the thing and they find themselves strong. And like there's one girl is like welling up and crying because she's so shocked at how strong she actually is. Like, poor thing.
Yeah.
That's like also entrenched in like men have to carry things for women. And like I remember when I was a waitress and I'd be doing the like stocking the upstairs and I'd be carrying these wine bottles up, which I did all the time, and I was really good at carrying loads of wine bottles, and all the men stopping and says, do you need help with that? Do you need help with that? No, I don't. I'm fucking doing it already. Can you not see me holding them? I'm literally holding them. And it's interesting when you said about that, because it made me think about, I always thought it's good we separate men's and women's sports because I thought men are physically more able than women because they are more muscular, they are taller, bigger, and so I thought it would be an unfair disadvantage for women to play against them, and I thought it would make women suffer because they wouldn't be able to achieve. But then I remember you telling me when you were researching this episode, Andrew, that women are way better in golf sometimes because of the way they physically are built.
Yeah.
And it made me realize, wait, being muscular and bigger isn't always a plus with sports. And also women can be strong, and as you said, your documentary, we just don't see ourselves as it.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
How are you supposed to become strong if you've convinced yourself or been convinced by society that you can't be? How are you supposed to become strong if there's nowhere like to go and do it? Like if there's there isn't a equivalent set of resources available to do rugby, for example, for women, right? This is a thing where, you know, there's these national teams and they'll have a men's team and a women's team, but it'll be like, oh, well, the women's team play and train at this like rusted out, like old club, like outside of town. And then the men have like the elite, like sporting facility. So like how it's a classic Simpsons line actually, where Bart's like, wait a minute. So we're behind and you want us to catch up by going slower than the other kids? That doesn't make any sense, right?
This week, I hope we can finish our work on the letter A.
Let me get this straight. We're behind the rest of our class, and we're going to catch up to them by going slower than they are? Cuckoo! Cuckoo!
And it's reflected in the... like, I would say there's a good point to be made that if today, right now, in an instant, you took all the sports that are currently gender separate, gender segregated, and you undid that, women would fail immediately.
Yeah.
But that's because they've been playing in a kind of in completely different leagues.
Exactly.
That don't have the same resources, that don't have the same push. Like they're not being asked to do the same things. And so, of course, they would perform very differently if what they did was go play the men's version of the game, and that's where it comes in. We've defaulted, thanks to movements like Muscular Christianity, to sports being a men's thing and women's sports being this adjunct, this thing you add on to it, right?
It really reminded me of something. I worked in a refugee charity teaching a drama club. And the woman who runs the charity was training me in it. And they were so well behaved, these kids. I have never done a drama club where they're so well behaved. And I was teaching them uni degree level stuff, and they were taking it really well. And I said to her, why are they so well behaved? And she said, I don't let them be late. If you're late, you're not allowed in. And I saw her doing it. And I'm very strict with them. And I said, oh, but in charity sector, we don't do that, because what if they've got something going on at home? Or what if, you know what I mean? Like, they've got these really hard lives, and will that put people off attending? She was like, I don't want them to attend if they don't care enough to be on time. Interestingly, she then said to me, and I really disagreed with her, but then she said, the grammar school, they are not teaching their kids that they could be late. At the grammar school, they are not giving them worse things to teach them because they don't think they can do it. So the grammar school kids are the ones that are becoming these famous actors and stuff, because we've taught people like they're poor and they can't deal with higher education. And she was like, I'm not setting people up for failure like that. And it's like the women in football and the women in sports is if you teach them like they won't succeed because you think, oh, they've got all these things that mean they won't be as good, then they aren't going to get to the level that the men will, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense to me. I mean, absolutely makes sense as a philosophy to sort of say, yeah, like if you don't task people with doing what's really difficult and pushing themselves, then can they necessarily overcome and achieve is, I believe, one of the great debates of pedagogy. So we've stumbled on it.
Pedagogy, what's that mean?
The study of teaching children.
Oh,
yes,
cool.
Would be the best way to sort of summarize that. Yes.
That's a good word. I'm really, really loving the new series of Gladiators is back, everyone. It's the most bisexual show on TV. I bloody love it.
Anyone from the US listening, they just call American gladiators in the UK. It's fine.
So there are like some amazingly strong people on gladiators. And what's really nice to see, the female gladiators are from like different sports. So like I think one is a professional sprinter, one is an amazing rugby player. I think her name's Fury, she's amazing. But like they have different body shapes. So like the sprinter one, when she does the like rock climbing or the chasing kind of competitions, like she's like so fast. But then when they're doing like more of the like the kind of like pugil stick, the like bashing each other, or like the wrestling kind of games, they'll have like different contestants with different like shaped bodies and different kind of muscles in different backgrounds, like rugby or like weightlifting or whatever, for the different sports. And it's like, well, they're all gladiators, like they're all like the best in their game, and yeah, they don't look the same. And like I think that's how I kind of feel about it. It's like, you know, like if you had Olympian weightlifter women go up against like, you know, the same weight class, the same like lifting ability as like the equivalent men, surely like they'd have a fun day and a great competition because they're all like equally matched.
And I think that's why it's so good to talk about this with social constructs. Like, I don't think I would have thought to talk about sports, but I think it links back to like everything else we've talked about in the whole series. And it is just another demonstration of how our society has fallen into this really segregated place. And maybe a completely different reality in a different alternative universe had a different structure for how they would deal with sports. But I also was thinking when you were talking out earlier about what could be the other system. And I was thinking about weight classes in wrestling and stuff. So what if, I'm not saying we just completely go, no structure, everyone competes against everyone.
Yeah.
But for whatever sport it is, different classes of where you have to be. So it could be like basketball, height class.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Weight class. Like,
just taking it from distilling what the sport is.
Yeah.
And then going, okay, these are the core elements of that sport. Because, you know, even in basketball, forwards tend to be much shorter than the rest of the team because their job is to be fast.
Yeah.
That's it. Their job is to be fast. And so, there's just why this is the metric you want to separate by. Seems like it might be it lacks imagination, I would argue.
Yeah, I think we've just got fallen into that, like, it's men and women, and that's the only things. But also, as we're talking about this, I realised this all sounds a very complicated way to do it. So I don't know if I do have the answers.
But probably worthwhile. And to think, all this episode, this is speaking to the value of seemingly unrelated. You said you wouldn't have thought of it this way. I also don't know if I would have thought of it this way. But I just wanted to find out the history of where putt/crazy golf came from. And I ended up interviewing this lady from St. Andrews who is in charge of the St. Andrews Ladies Archive. And she tells me this story. And I'm like, what? And now we have a seemingly unrelated. For this episode, it was a genuine struggle to find someone to interview about the topic. It seems like the topic of women's sport here in 2026 has become something of a political third rail for many people. But we did manage to get two interviewees who are not professional athletes, but they both write extensively about sport, and they both have personal experience playing in amateur sports leagues as well. Up first, we return to talking to Dr. Isaac Hoff about sport and its relationship to masculinity in modern Britain. He's got a lot to say about football in particular, so go Scotland. You can listen to the full interview on Patreon, but for right now, here's what Isaac has to say.
I remember interviewing one of the guys about what they liked about playing football, and they said, well, amongst friends, you kind of hold back a bit, you know, because you're all friends. And you have that care towards one another. But against strangers, you're playing in a league or whatever. He said, oh, you know, thereabouts, part of the fun is being more aggressive.
There's something about the competitiveness that brings out an aggression. What do you think kind of accounts for that impulse that was reported to you?
I think a lot of that is to do with the nature of the sport. itself. You know, it's a contact. I don't mean this in a kind of Mark Lawrence and it's a man's game way. I mean, it is a contact sport. If you're not matching the kind of force and aggression of the other person going into a tackle or shoulder to shoulder or whatever, you're going to get hurt. I remember one guy used to play and he was a nightmare. He would do slide tackles, right, on a 5, which for your listeners is like, you're not meant to do it, right? If you're playing in a league, if you slide tackle someone, you go off because it's not considered, it's just not the rules, right? But I remember in one game, someone came in and he did it. Someone went, you know, we've all got work in the morning, let's calm down. So I also think care is wrapped up in a kind of classed existence in relation to this as well. So the guys who I did the research about were kind of lower middle class, petty bourgeois, but they still needed to go to work to be able to sustain their lifestyle. And again, that comes back to, again, football being used by the Victorians, the idea it would civilise the working masses.
We note in the episode, you sort of hinted at it here in your work, that there is this connection between sport and leisure time, if for no other reason than before leisure time existed, when the hell were you going to play a sport? So then I wonder, women being, especially in the middle class, largely absent from the workforce in this same time period, why did sport become like a men's thing that women have sort of been adjuncted on towards the end? Wouldn't it make sense that women should be the athletes because they should have more leisure time, since men are supposed to be off earning the money?
What's interesting in the UK, women's football, until it was banned, was incredibly popular. You know, you would have thousands, tens of thousands of people going to women's football games in the 20s or before the FA banned women's football, that, you know, this was popular, right? A lot of it's to do with what women, it wasn't seen as womanly. You know, if we socially construct femininity as the opposite of masculinity, submissive, non-competitive, caring. On another, I think it's something to do with the way in which public space is gendered and was gendered and still is to some extent. We see it in very different ways, where public space outside of the home, was very much seen as the world of men. Like, men go discuss things, they engage in their practices, they talk politics, have affairs, you know, whatever it is, right? And women's space was the home. They were to look after the home, and that would be a shelter from the world of the public, right? Sport and leisure takes place in that public sphere. We don't see it as a women's game. And that's changing, you know, and that's, you know, the ban on women's football was lifted. And I think in the UK, the Lionesses, their success was a real watershed moment. Even 15 years ago, 10 years before that, you would not have people watching women's football like that. No way. Men would often laugh at it, you know, like, oh, yeah, the goalkeepers of this, it's so slow. But it changed.
It's so much less to do with whether or not they can physically compete on par with men. And as you note, it's things like, well, women weren't really meant to go outside. And I wonder, as a cis man who plays, you still play five-a-side, yeah?
I'm playing later.
You're playing later? I got a game later today. Is there any part of you that thinks, ooh, I don't want women or non-binary people? It would change it to a degree that's really significant and have a real impact on your experience.
So I did a little project about five-a-side last year, and a couple of the guys I spoke to played in a non-competitive, inclusive game, right? So on one level, the idea of having a non-competitive game to me was like, well, what's the point? And then it was like, it's non-competitive, but it's also inclusive. So you can be a man, you can be a woman, you can be non-binary, you can be trans. And the guy was saying, well, if you're not confident in playing, or you're new to the game, or you're just going to make friends, you know, you'd have people in that game who'd come into ours and really love it, or they'd come into it and it would probably be intimidating, it would probably not be very pleasant, it might bring up experiences they've had in the past that if not traumatic, really not pleasant at all. And so there's that kind of element. So it's all right for me because I'm who I am, I'm particularly advantaged in terms of class, race, gender. So moving between different spaces with a relative ease and being able to kind of blend in as much as you can is not a problem for me. But if you're visibly not immersed in that conventional, traditional men's football world, all of a sudden you're not going to feel comfortable in those spaces, and you might not be made to feel comfortable as well, because each space is policed in its own way, that enables and constrains who you can be. So my answer to your question, I think it would depend on the game I was playing.
Women in almost all sports, but especially things like football or rugby, have like 100-year gap to make up for. So it is a sort of like, it's almost like the mixed league you describe is almost just like a good transition path. Like in 30 years, in 50 years, who knows? I want to thank Isaac for all of his lovely contributions to this podcast. But our next interview is with Janet Eagleson, who is a sports journalist for rotowire.com. So this is her personal and professional experience about the role of women in hockey over the last 2 decades. You can again listen to the whole thing on Patreon, but let's hear from Janet right now.
My name is Janet Eagleson. I'm the senior hockey writer for rotowire.com. We provide online content for all of the major platforms in North America, probably the ones that would be professional sports related that you would see worldwide. So I work on the NHL side. So we provide for ESPN, Yahoo Sports, CBS Sportsline, Fantrax, TSN, and Sportsnet. I've been involved in this for probably close to 25 years. I have been exceedingly fortunate to be able to cover NHL teams that I have used to be fans for, because when you're in the business, you are no longer a fan. It's just business, but it's a lot of fun.
Yes, and I will note for our UK listeners, hockey means ice hockey. If you're in the United Kingdom, hockey means field hockey. What's the current state of, in your experience, the current state of gender in the professional hockey sphere?
It's interesting. So hockey in the North American context, in any place where it is actually played professionally, is exceedingly conservative. It is about as white male, and it's very any kind of 2S LGBT pieces are well hidden. Even if you look at the popularity in North America around the concept of heated rivalry, if you haven't looked it up, apparently on Netflix, people love it. We can get into an entire conversation around that, which would be fascinating. There is the PWHL. So the NHL is the National Hockey League, but there's a professional women's league that is taking off and selling out large arenas as well, primarily based in Canada. A few of the American cities have it, and they're expanding. So it's really starting to take off.
So it's a conservative sport, and like you said, the professional women's league is growing, and even in your field, in the sports journalism, there's more and more women every year. Has that surprised you as a development, or do you think that that makes quite a lot of sense given some sort of factors you've noticed?
Lots of people do focus testing. Lots of people figure out where the audience lies. And so you have a mix of what will the primary pre-existing audience tolerate, and then the desire to acquire new audiences means that, and as well affirmative, in the US it would be affirmative action, but any of the other places where the concept of either equality or equity starts to come to pass is that there are more opportunities for people for coming through traditional sports. There is still a glass ceiling irrespective. Any woman who enters into the space in any field where work has to be that much more perfect, the alignment, the fixation on appearance, the fixation on what you're wearing, you have to work super hard.
I mean, once it becomes a thing because of something like Title IX, its prevalence is going to be, okay, well, how much money really can someone make off of that now being in or hip or whatever? That's you sort of witnessed that as being a major motivator for the increased visibility of women.
Absolutely. We could fight against it, and we could say that is horrific, that it's marketing. It should be X. It should be that equity and equality come to pass. There should be a gender balance and all those things. Accepting that that's the fact that's creating the door allows you to enter that space in a more concrete way, and then to push for the next person and for the next person and the next person.
If we took, say, here in England, or in Britain rather, the Lionesses, which are the winningest football team this island has ever seen, if you put one or two or three of them onto the men's team, then what happens to the women's game?
I don't know if a construct or a goal that was created by somebody that isn't me or isn't part of who I am as a woman, if that's the right goal I should be working towards. Like, why? Let's have that conversation. Do I want to be a fourth liner on an NHL team? Maybe that's like every little girl maybe wants that, or maybe wants to play, as we hear them now in Canada. When you hear interviews outside of arenas and the media coverage and clips on YouTube and in social, is that I want to be like, and they insert one of the players' names because they want to be like her. Because she's playing in the PWHL or she's played for Team Canada, and because she's smart and she gets it and she can handle herself, and that's who they want to be. Let's define it ourselves.
Absolutely.
If the very origin of gender segregation in modern sports is owed to women being perhaps a little too good at golf and men perhaps being a little too self-conscious about their moral muscles, do we really need to keep maintaining the separation?
The chance to push the human body beyond what we consider its current limits is one of the core appeals of sport. Every Olympics, someone sets a world record, and we all cheer because they dared to be more than what we all thought anyone could be.
But we built these barriers out of fear and uncertainty and shame about radical changes in daily life and a future that just didn't seem to provide what men of the 19th century expected. Anything that confirmed this uncertainty was almost too much to bear. Social constructs root themselves in our fears of losing control, just like they used to control others.
And next time you've got a free afternoon, find a public golf course. And if you've never played the sport before, do very poorly trying to consistently hit a ball off the tee. It's difficult. Hopefully, someone who knows better, be they a man, woman, or non-binary individual, will take pity on you and teach you Scotland's game. So that's the end of this episode, gang. We just got one more of these type of episodes and then one more little button concluding episode left in season 3. The sun is setting on this beautiful season, and I think we'll all enjoy perhaps a football game on the beach, very Top Gun style. So, Al, I want to thank you again for being co-host this season. It's been an absolute pleasure. Please, where can people find your kinetic creations that demonstrate muscles, but perhaps in a more abstract way?
If you would like to design with me a puppet-inspired crazy golf course, you can find me at aliciabrittpuppetry.co.uk, and I would be more than happy to hear your ideas.
Instead of a windmill, a marionette just drops down and tries to swipe the ball away.
I love it.
And Naomi, as always, thank you for being the captain of this team, this squad of, I don't know, the softest
We're not a good
players
sports team. I don't think we should try and refer to ourselves as a sports team.
Well, where can people come to, hire you for their sports team, maybe, if they need some audio production services?
If you need some audio production service for your sports team, as most sports teams do. You can contact me on Instagram at Kaomi Productions, which is just Naomi with a K in the front.
I love it. And of course, if you want to help support this show, you can hit the subscribe button in whatever platform you're using right now to listen to the sound of my voice. You can go to patreon.com/seemingly unrelated as well, where for just $2, you can find out what's going on with those mummies that Naomi doesn't remember anything happening. The Victorians were weird, as well as about 18 other episodes that are bonuses there only for our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Season 3 and hopefully all of Season 3 of Seemingly Unrelated. We'll be back next week with another episode, and this time it's got delicious fish tacos involved. Goodbye, everybody.
Woo-hoo-hoo.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Seemingly Unrelated is a Life's Little Murder Boards production. Created and hosted by Andrew Johnstone, audio production and editing services provided by Naomi Cohn. Our artwork is by Megan Zemet. The theme song is Irizumi by Pistol Jazz. To find out more about everyone involved and access the show notes for this episode, visit us at seeminglyunrelatedpod.com.